Hello and welcome. The British are renowned for talking about the weather, and I've certainly a lot of weather I could be talking about going on here, but I shall refrain from doing so on the assumption you've had enough of that kind of talk. There is a place, however, on occasions for some, what we refer to in the Pali language, sampapalapa, just because we're Buddhists. Even the Buddha said, and it is in our Vinaya, that on receiving new monks that are visiting your monastery or guests, one inquires after their journey, their well-being, if there's anything they need. And one can include a little light conversation, such as the weather, to relax them, put them at ease. Imagine if you arrived somewhere and were faced with sort of blank faces and no communication. So Buddhism is a cheerful, happy philosophy, a religion of joy, bliss and pleasure. And this cannot be emphasized enough. Often, as in the last talk, we talk about suffering, but one must see that as the obstacle to seeing the true happiness that we have within us. So moving on with the first comment. My question is, are the Mahayana sutras, like the Heart and Lotus Sutra, words of Buddha? And do Mahayana Bodhisattvas like Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara help us to enlightenment? Okay, so I by no means know authority on the Mahayana school of Buddhism, the northern school of Buddhism, having a long time ago researched that along with Tibetan, Vajrayana, that is, Mahayana and Vajrayana traditions, along with the southern school, Theravada tradition, which is ultimately what I chose to follow. So I didn't choose this without research. I chose Theravada because it seemed to be the closest teachings coming from the living Buddha himself, the Buddha of the Sakyamuni. We call him the Sakyamuni Buddha. So the enlightened being of the Sakyan tribe, Muni, enlightened, Sakyan, the tribe he came from. A real man in history who became enlightened and left as his legacy the Tipitaka. It was written down later, but orally transmitted for the first 100 years or so, until it was written down. And that is the suttas that the southern school work from, otherwise known as the Pali Canon. So these teachings of the northern school, like the Lotus Sutta and others, I don't know. I don't believe they are the word of the Buddha. And also, from my memory, which is vague, of such suttas, don't really fit in with what he actually said in the Sutta Pitaka, within his discourses. And therefore, I doubt they are. They're something that's been adapted and added on later. But you should ask Mahayana practitioners such questions. As far as bodhisattvas, like Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara, I struggle with that word. I've heard it pronounced in so many different ways. A monastery I stayed at for a long time in Thailand had quite a thing about this deity. Bodhisattva, however you would refer to these beings. Do they help us to enlightenment? No. They may help you improve your mental states, qualities of mind by thinking about them, as it does reflecting on the qualities of the Buddha. But the Buddha left us teachings to help us become enlightened ourselves, to teach us how we become enlightened. We don't pray to a god, we don't pray to a saviour, a bodhisattva, or any of these beings in the southern school, the Theravada school of Buddhism, to assist with our enlightenment. We reflect on the qualities of the Buddha, we take refuge in the Buddha. We reflect on his teachings, the Dharma, we take refuge in that, the Dharma. And we have the support with whom we can take refuge also of the Sangha in order to do that and to bring us towards enlightenment using the teachings of the Buddha as instructions, as a guidebook as to how to get there. We don't look to some other being, whether they lived a long time ago or omnipresent, living now in heavenly realms or elsewhere. It's irrelevant. It is up to us to eradicate the defilements, the kilesas of greed, hatred and delusion for ourselves within this lifetime through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path in order to become free from suffering in this lifetime and free from future rebirths into samsara. Excuse me if my attention was wandering slightly there. I'm having a whole range of kittens walking in. I don't know whether you're seeing them on the camera, but they've taken to appear at this time of day. What was a kitten has given birth to 3 more even smaller kittens. They're like these Russian dolls, cats here, with the many smaller as you go inside. They just infinitely are reborn into the realm of cats, the cat realm. Something going on here. Anyway, inundated with them at the moment, which is very sweet, very pleasant. They're very dear. I did leave some food there, otherwise they'd be jumping all over me going, wow, wow, wow. All this meditation is way too much and bad, man. You should take a break and quit being a monk. Oh, why? What do you know that I'm not really seeing here? So that's your opinion. How's it working out for you? I don't know what more to say. Meditation is harmless, not only to yourself, but you're not really affecting others by practicing meditation either. You're not taking anything away from society. It's a very inert practice. Here we go. And you're going to get to see them all now, looking around for the small bits of food that they found wasn't enough, was it? So no, meditation is only there to do you good. But if you're not enjoying it, then that's okay. It's up to you. And I wouldn't consider quitting being a monk because I have such a happy life. My happiness comes from contentment. It's not just a raw emotion coming from external stimulation of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or imagining things. I feel absolutely content in this form, in this lifestyle, in this way of living. And that in itself brings about enormous bliss and joy, but happiness in essence, as I began with. Look at even these dear little kittens. They're so happy just being around this place with no fears, no concerns. This one looks like a leopard. It has leopard spots under its fur. Don't chew, little leopard kitten. And the other one has tiger legs with the stripes. And they're my little Kalyanamita, my little friends. Be careful of your whiskers. This is a burning thing. Yes, you know that, don't you? Oh, she goes like this with the smoke. And they're quite big now. A couple of weeks ago, these were tiny little things when they appeared. A monk's vegetarian. Thanks for your videos, that's okay. Not necessarily it's a matter of choice. We aren't choosy about what food we're offered, but we can choose what we put in our mouths. Personally, I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat dairy products or eggs either, but that's my decision. It isn't compulsory, it's optional. I want to ask, how do you sit in meditation at a time. Straight, that is, without taking breaks. How long do other monks sit without taking breaks? You mentioned you meditate upon waking for up to 3 hours in the morning. I would like to know how it is structured. If you do just the one sit for 3 hours, or do you have multiple practices? I'm trying to see what is the norm. I like the idea of sitting for 30 minutes and then doing walking meditation and then sitting for another 30 minutes. Okay, so that's a good way to begin, but we look to try and increase our time that we sit for meditation, and there is no norm, no normal. And everyone will have a different way of approaching meditation, but most people will need to start off sitting for a short while and extend the length that they sit, and possibly intersperse that with walking meditation. Personally, in answer to your question, when I sit for 3 hours, I generally sit for 3 hours. I've got no time constraints, so just because I wake up at 3 in the morning, but I have things to do beginning at 6 a.m. means I have 3 hours to sit. And that is what I do. But that's not to mean that I'm sitting there looking at a clock. I don't. I awake, I sit, I may get a glass of water or something, but may then sit and just sit and meditate. And usually in my own time, when that finishes, it's time to start getting ready for morning puja, chanting, and my morning alms round, which follows that. So that's the first 3 hours. And then there are similar periods of the day when I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to sit as long also. Now I can, because I've been meditating for a long time, sit for the entire period for 3 hours, but I wouldn't expect someone new to meditation to do that. When you get comfortable in this posture, if you'll notice, more often than not, occasionally today and yesterday, I might be fidgeting a bit more than other times, but usually I'll sit here just for this talk, which is often considerably longer than 30 minutes. But apart from my hands, which I may wave about quite a little bit, nothing else needs to move. And this is the same in meditation, in fact more easily done, because you're not talking, you're not thinking, you're not reading or answering questions. You're simply sitting watching a meditation object, and this becomes your focus of awareness, if that is your style of meditation. My own practice is to some extent, I suppose, somewhat advanced, having been only doing meditation for such a long time and nothing else to distract me from that or get in the way, no other real duties. I can become absorbed in meditation quite quickly on sitting and enjoy that for a considerable length of time. But you're starting off correctly, increasing it though, I would suggest, if you can, by 10 minutes every few days or so, and making sure that you are getting towards sitting for really at least an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening if you're serious about getting the true benefits from meditation. Albeit there's nothing wrong with short time. Meditation is in fact, when you are used to meditation and able to practice sama samadhi, right samadhi, that is single pointed focus, awareness on a meditation object, and become absorbed in your meditation, is timeless. Really, that point of real mindfulness, even for the shortest time, is better than sitting for an hour or so just thinking about stuff and letting your imagination wander into the future, or worrying or thinking about the past, which is not what we're practicing when we're looking to practicing sama samadhi, right samadhi. So we do have to do that over extended periods initially in order to find those little sweet spots in that time of pure conscious awareness of a meditation object, focus. And this is the overall practice. But then you can learn, and you will come to enjoy much longer sits as time goes by with your practice, as it develops. Okay. What should you do if you feel like your progression in meditation has grown stagnant and you feel like you are not advancing in the practice? So we can measure our progress on the path, that is the Noble Eightfold Path. We can measure our progress with regards to our meditation by the look at the qualities we are developing, we have developed in ourselves when we're not meditating. So when we look at our reactions to certain events, whether they are good or whether they are bad, the first and foremost, most obvious thing is equanimity. Are we reacting badly towards something that affects us badly, and perhaps reacting inappropriately? Or are we seeing this and not reacting, but understanding, however, maintaining equanimity, this quality we're looking to develop through our meditation? Equanimous, knowing that all things are impermanent, suffering, and out of our control. Have we developed these qualities, this understanding? So if we look at our practice yesterday, the day before, the week before, there's not much to give us any indication towards progress, like looking at a photograph, like looking at your face in the mirror from day to day. But if we look at a photograph of our face 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there can be a considerable change, a considerable difference. And this is the way we look at the qualities we have developed as a result of our meditation. Using that example again, like equanimity. How would we have reacted, say, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, or 3 years ago, before we started practicing meditation, to the same event that is affecting us today? By comparison, if our reactions haven't changed whatsoever, if our mindfulness throughout all of our daily activities have not changed whatsoever in a good period of time of meditation, more than 6 months, then we're perhaps not meditating correctly. This is not Sama Samadhi, not Sama Sati, right mindfulness. But if we are meditating correctly, if we are sitting and we're really putting in the effort to maintain focus on a meditation object and become absorbed in meditation, those qualities will develop, and there will be a marked and significant change in our reactions to things now to how they were before we began the practice of meditation. There will be a marked and significant change in our mindfulness about everything we do within all of our daily activities of body, speech and mind. Our attention to sila, moral virtue, the supporting foundations and structure for our meditation, is also maintained by that practice of meditation. How are we dealing with that in everyday life now compared to prior to our beginning practicing meditation? This is where we look at the comparison. If you are not seeing any advancing, you're saying you feel like you're not advancing in the practice, check and look back how you were and how you are now, how you behaved and how you behave now. If there's no difference, then you need to speak to a meditation teacher or ask me more questions about the actual meditation you're doing and improve upon it. But if you can see a change, however small or insignificant you may find it to be, any change is a progression in your practice. And some people progress quickly, some people more slowly. There is no normal. So we can only look back as far as we began the practice, and that is the starting point. Have those qualities of mindfulness, qualities of equanimity, qualities of even loving kindness, compassion and joy for others, the opposite of jealousy or envy. Kindness, generosity, truthfulness, patience, and just refraining, keeping the 5 precepts, refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and taking intoxicants. Have these qualities all developed further than when you began the practice? Do some of them stand out as having developed more? This is where some people digress and get onto more in-depth kinds. They may still be experiencing a considerable amount of, say, perhaps aversion in everyday activities, in which case they start to practice more along the lines of metta meditation, reciting mantras relating to loving kindness repeatedly whilst they sit and meditate. And that can help. But I would encourage you to stick to the original maintenance of awareness on the breath, anapanasati, because this is all encompassing. And although some qualities will develop more quickly than others, they will catch up with those others. As and when you start to really develop or perfect equanimity, then metta will have the opportunity to catch up. As you develop metta, generosity, kindness, truthfulness might have the opportunity to catch up with the continued practice of anapanasati, for example, rather than keep chopping and changing to suit what you think are your shortfalls. You just miss out on the overall picture, this holistic practice of development. Development of wholesome mind states, reduction of unwholesome mind states, without too much specificity. Don't be too specific on your faults. Know that your practice of sitting is going to assist to reduce the root causes of those faults, those defilements of greed, hatred and delusion. And then you go on to say, how should one sit to meditate if one has disabilities preventing them from sitting cross-legged and upright for extended periods of time? So yes, you can sit in a chair, your wheelchair, your whatever kind of normal sitting arrangement you have, but not your comfy chair, not where you laze back to watch your TV programs or read your book or go to sleep. Sit upright. Even if it's in the same chair, take the cushions away, sit upright and don't lean. Sit with a straight, well, if you can, a straight back, but whatever your physical condition allows your posture to be most awake in. So the opposite to resting and going off to sleep, the most awake position is fine. The Buddha describes meditation postures as sitting, standing, walking or lying down. It seems like it's just those four postures, but I think what you can interpret from that is it doesn't matter, your posture can be anything, from lying down to standing up, including walking. It's about the mind, developing the mind. But of course, your physical posture, if it's leaning, it's going to be prone to go to sleep and then lose mindfulness. So we need to keep it awake by sitting in an upright way. Other than that, don't worry too much about sitting cross-legged on the floor. That's really not so important. But I would encourage anyone that can to begin their practice that way, because it makes life much easier later on. I now have no problem sitting like this all day for everything I do. I have no chairs in here. No need, because I find sitting on a chair actually quite uncomfortable now, because I've been sitting on a floor like this for so long. If I sit on a chair, it has to be really one without arms, so that I can sit like this on a chair with my in half lotus, as I always sit. Because if a chair's got arms, I have to sit with my legs forcibly straight down. And you'll see all the monks at their lunches and their ceremonies here sit on chairs with arms. So that their arms are on here or on their lap, but their legs are straight down. And I find joining in on those occasions very tiresome and very uncomfortable, because I'm not used to sitting like this, especially for eating. I find this is a far more flexible and all-round position for all multi-purpose sitting posture. So if you can, try and adapt and develop this. It's a very useful exercise, because then wherever you are, whatever the circumstances, you can sit like this. You don't need anything. I don't need a cushion. We're kind of required to carry a sitting cloth and always sit on this cloth. This is a Vinaya thing. But that's to protect our robes, or also whatever we're sitting on, from us if we're dirty. So if the floor's dirty, we're kept clean. If we're dirty, what we're sitting on is kept clean. So it's just etiquette, really. But it's just a thin piece of material, the same as this that we sit on. That's all I need to sit anywhere in the world. Beach, rocks, mountains. I've sat in the Himalayas, at the base of the foot in Nepal, at the sort of foothills of Mount Everest. I've sat on beaches on Cambodian islands, in airport, busy terminals, railway platforms, shopping precincts, beautiful temples and monasteries, forest monasteries of just little wooden huts, jungle floors, and everything on just this piece of cloth or similar pieces of cloth like it. And once I close my eyes, go into samadhi, it actually doesn't matter where I am. That's the point. Keep it simple. Are 4 to 5 hours sleep enough? They are for a monk, or should be, yes, because we're not doing, or shouldn't be, doing much else. Now, some monks are very busy, especially here. They have actual teaching jobs and jobs in administrative positions, even within government, not politically, but in departments of government, like the Buddhisasana, which is the department of the government that deals with the Buddhist religions and different sects and nikayas in this country. It's staffed by some monks as well as lay people, as are the educational systems here. So they're working, monks, they're working, so I'm sure they need a little bit more sleep. But a meditation monk, a Kammatthana monk, a working monk, as in working on just eradicating the defilements, like me, with nothing else to do, and also living alone, I have no other duties. My shelter, my upkeep, my maintenance of this property is negligible. I sweep the floor out each day and sweep the leaves away outside each morning and possibly again in the afternoon is sufficient. I have no other duties. So yes, 4 to 5 hours sleep is more than enough, as well as a lot of meditation, which is even more restorative than sleep. But if you're a working layperson, then you probably need 6 to 8 hours is more appropriate. If a Catholic takes refuge in the Triple Gem, consider to be Buddhist. So that's how it comes out in the translation. So if a Catholic takes refuge in the Triple Gem, are they Buddhist? Well, Buddhist is just a term for someone who's practicing what the Buddha teaches us. So anybody who is keeping the precepts, practicing meditation and developing wisdom, is in a sense practicing the Noble Eightfold Path and following the teachings of the Buddha, and therefore could be considered Buddhist. But if they, for instance, are Catholic and believe in God, one God, a creator God, Jesus Christ and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that they have a God who has to forgive them their sins and all of this stuff, then they don't have right view, which is the first point and one of the most important points of the Noble Eight. Well, they're all important. You can't have any of them missing because there are only 8. But the 8 factors of the Noble Path begin with right view, which includes the understanding of rebirth, which of course Catholicism does not. The understanding of karma, which of course Catholicism does not. The understanding of the Four Noble Truths, anicca, dukkha, anatta, that is also impermanence, unsatisfactory, and not self. We believe in rebirth, not reincarnation, because reincarnation implies that something is reborn, whereas rebirth is only as a consequence of causes and conditions we put in place. This is the nature of karma, actions, and vipaka, the results of those actions. This, of course, is not Catholicism. So if someone renounces Catholicism, they can be Buddhist. But simply taking refuge in the Triple Gem, saying Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dharnam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami 3 times in triplicate, is just stating words. One has to mean it. You take refuge in the Buddha, the teacher, the Dharma, his teachings, and the Sangha, that lineage of monks there to support you in practicing those teachings. That is taking refuge. But that is not Catholicism. So the two will not go hand in hand, no. So a Catholic is a Catholic, a Buddhist is a Buddhist, if you have to have labels. But that doesn't mean a Catholic cannot be practicing, will be keeping sila, moral virtue. but they will be possibly, and more often than not, drinking wine, so breaking the 5th precept. In whatever form, even a little bit at communion, it's still breaking the 5th precept. I know from experience that when I was not drinking for a long time and still a practicing Christian, that taking that communion wine in church early in the morning had a significant effect on me. I used to drink a lot, and then I stopped drinking, didn't drink anything at all. But going to church, a Christian church, and having communion, drinking that wine, had a remarkable effect on me. Not of a spiritual, religious, uplifting nature at all. Basically made me think, well, I just want to carry on. This is very nice in the morning. Let's go to the pub as soon as this is finished. But that's just a silly example, but quite serious in a way, in terms of the differences here. So we take refuge in the Triple Gem is not a ceremony, it's what we mean to do. You hear it recited over and over again, even the precepts recited over and over again in Pali. If you don't understand what you're saying, say it in English. I take refuge in the Triple Gem. I take refuge in the Buddha, the teacher, the Dharma, his teachings, the Sangha, that lineage of monks supporting us in those teachings. Say it like that, in your mother tongue. As with the precepts, I refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and taking intoxicants. This is Tisarana Panchasila, which many have asked about taking. And you can do that at home, alone, from the chanting book, reciting it to yourself. What is important is not the form, going to a monastery, and how you take it with monks or not, or where you take it. It is the intention behind it, to really mean it. The intention to take refuge, really take refuge, like coming in out of the rain, coming in out of the cold, into a warm and dry and cozy, comfortable environment. It should have that feel about it. Refuge, not a task, not a by rote, perfunctory ceremony, but really like the comfort the people in Catholicism, for instance, get from taking the wine, taking the bread, the blood of Christ, the flesh of Christ. They have comfort and resolve in that. Because it's a very mindful action of body, speech and mind, and the taste is so sensitive and reaction sensitive, in a way that is very easily or more easily applied towards mindfulness of how they are appropriating their faith in that subject matter. But very often I hear Buddhists reciting Buddham Saranam Gacchami over and over again, and the Panchasila, 5 precepts over and over again, with no meaning, no understanding, just a ritual performance, rites and rituals of which we're trying to abandon. Mean it and have comfort and reassurance and protection in that refuge you're taking. Then it is something real, tangible, and has a much better, warmer feeling that is experienced mindfully within the body, in the present moment, here and now, when it's felt and meant. Is it still considered solitude when you live with animals? I don't think so. I don't feel lonely. As you've seen, many little kittens running in, they've all gone away now. The dog might come in later. Rosie the cat. None of these animals, none of these creatures, including the snakes, the peacocks, the monkeys, the mongooses, which have taken to coming inside also now, the big water monitor lizards, which are somewhat like even bigger than that. They're about 1.5 meters long. These creatures, none of them are my pets. None of them are my responsibility, put it that way. They just come and they go, much like so do human beings, visitors from time to time, but less occasionally. Perhaps once a month, twice a month, I might have visitors, usually who are visiting Sri Lanka and have heard of me and come and visit me on their way back to Colombo or on their way somewhere else, because it's on that route to most people, and it's very nice for me to see those people. Now, when I see human beings, and we have interaction as in talking about Dharma, of course a little bit about the weather and how they got here and where they're from, as I said at the beginning, but we normally then will talk about meditation, my style of practice, why I'm living alone here in my vihara rather than with other monks in the monasteries and temples. What's going on here? We have this little discussion. That is a break in solitude, a break in my retreat, and a very welcome break in my retreat, because it's once a month, twice a month, for an hour or so at the very most. But when other beings, animals that I don't converse with, are coming and going, it's just that. They're just coming and going. They're not my responsibility. I can, as this morning I left some food out for Rosie, as I do each day, and what's left the kittens can come and finish off. And that's as far as it goes. But they're the responsibility of people living in the surrounding houses here, village nearby, and so on and so forth. And they just wander in as they wish and go as they wish. So they're not really a distraction. But as I said in my video about loneliness, you're never alone. It's impossible to be alone unless really you go into the Arctic or somewhere like that, or the very middle of the desert, a desert where it's very, very cold or very, very hot and no beings are living, in which case you're not going to survive long either yourself. In other environments, there's always other beings around of that nature. You say, when you live with animals, of course there's always going to be animals. So you tend to find, when you first are practicing in solitude for any length of time and you're not used to it, you make friends with all kinds of little creatures. Even a spider in the corner of the wall up there becomes your pal, your buddy, even someone you might talk to from time to time rather than just talking to yourself. It does no harm. It's a way of developing metta, loving kindness, for creatures that you might just ignore normally and pass by without thought or consideration. But from that moment forward, throughout your life, you will always give the same and similar creatures that have kept you company through your lonely times consideration that you might not have thought to do so previously. And this is how we're not lonely. We know that we're always surrounded by other beings, of which we were once in previous lives and might be again in future lives. All friends on the path towards enlightenment in this respect, and all wishing to do no others any harm other than, in the case of animals, for their own protection or nourishment, food. They don't really wish to harm other creatures. So snakes that I have here, they don't harm me, they just go by. They know I'm not going to harm them. And it would be difficult for me to accidentally tread on one, because I walk very carefully in bare feet. So you can be careful, mindful in all your activities, not to harm creatures, and then they won't harm you. So it depends on where you think. To find solitude away from any living beings would be very difficult, and then it would be difficult for you to survive yourself. But when we refer to solitude, the solitude of retreat, we're usually referring to other beings. I'm also interacting, although not speaking, no conversation for that reason, each and every day on Pindapata, on alms round, collecting my food, which is offered each day. This is not solitude in that respect, because I might offer a chant, a blessing, in response to their bowing and their hands in Anjali, and this is an interaction. But the mind remains in solitude in practice as you go through this, to some extent, perfunctory activity each morning to get your food. But it is a requirement of bhikkhus, whether they're in solitude or not, on retreat or not, to go out in order to be supported by lay people, if the lay people are not coming to their vihara, bringing their food to them, which they would do if I didn't go on Pindapata. And I think it's only fair, as I have little else to do, and they have busy lives to get on with, that I go to them. which is why I work that way. It's my livelihood, right livelihood in the Noble Eightfold Path. Pindapata, arms round. So why do you choose Buddhism over Hinduism, and what do you see as Lord Buddha in that? Not sure I understand the second part of that. Well, Buddhism is not a belief system. Hinduism is a belief system. So I don't choose a religion that is based on belief in gods to help save the day. I choose the teachings of a teacher who shows us through those teachings how we help ourselves to save the day. That's why I chose Buddhism. And how I see the Lord Buddha in that is not the Lord as in Lord God, more like Lord as a respectful title, like Lord Rendlesham, Speaker of the House. Well, that's going back so many years, but that's the last time I knew who the Speaker of the House was. Because he was related to a friend of mine. Yeah, Lord as in a title, a respectful title. We don't consider him as Lord God, a God we believe in. He was our teacher, like I said, of the Sakyan tribe, the living Buddha, a man who taught. Much like in Christianity, Jesus, a teacher who taught and died. Whether you believe and what you believe thereafter happened to these individuals is not a requirement of practicing Buddhism. You can still practice the Noble Eightfold Path. You can still have right view without believing the Buddha is the 9th avatar of Vishnu, for instance, as might be depicted in Hinduism. You don't have to believe that to still maintain right view in the practice of Buddhism. So that's why. And this old chestnut, caffeine, I don't think I need to repeat that one again. Is it one of the 5 precepts? No, you can drink as much coffee as you like and still legally drive a car. Alcohol, you cannot. Okay? How superior is the understanding of absolute truth to faith and truth? I had to translate this from Sinhalese script, and I'm not sure that Google Translate has done a very good job, because I don't really understand the question. How superior is the understanding of absolute truth to faith and truth? So let's take Pali words, truth satcha and faith sadha. Satcha and sadha. The reason I say take 2 Pali words, they're common in Buddhism throughout all languages. Satcha is truth, like the 4 Noble Truths. There is suffering. Is anybody in any doubt about that? If you are, sit still for as long as you can without moving. The second you need to move, you're experiencing suffering, the need to move, so as not to be suffering. You're experiencing the desire to not have that feeling. That's aversion. This is dukkha, this is suffering, that is truth, satcha. Sadha is faith, or better described as confidence. Confidence that if you accept the truth of the 4 Noble Truths, you have right view. That is, you understand the characteristics of existence. Not only in anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, things being out of your control, but the basis of which all of that comes from, the 4 Noble Truths, that there's suffering and there is a cause of suffering. The end of suffering and the path leading to the end of suffering. So, how superior is truth, satcha, above faith? They're equal. They're both necessary. You need to have truth, whether it's truth from what you are saying, or truth about what you believe in or what you're hearing, or just truth as in the Dharma, as in phenomena, what you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching or thinking about, experience, satcha, but you also have to have confidence, saddha, faith, that keeping precepts, practicing meditation, developing wisdom will lead you to that truth, a better understanding of that truth and right view. So I would say there's no superior between truth and faith, if that is the question you're asking. They're both necessary. You need faith to see truth, you need truth to have faith. If you have faith in anything other than truth, it is not faith, it is blind faith, it is belief. If you have faith in truth, you have confidence, as opposed to belief or blind faith. So faith must be described, saddha must be described as something understood of truth, derived from truth. But that doesn't make truth superior to faith, because one needs faith to see truth. And on that note, I think that's the last of the comments. It's not. No, they keep going. Maybe one more then. In our haste and earnestness to live a simple life and focus on the breath, can we end up denying society and the world around us? Can we develop a fear and aversion towards worldly things? Is it not better to accept the abundance of society and resting in, or perhaps even enjoying the knowledge that one day it will all perish? See, this doesn't sound like it's a path towards an end of suffering. Accepting that samsara is the way it is okay, but to just sit back and say, that's it, we're all suffering, I'm going to put my feet up and distract myself the best way I know how to get through it, because we're all going to perish anyway. This isn't going to liberate us from rebirth or free us from suffering within this lifetime, which is what we can actually experience if we practice. So we're not hiding away. We're not going to develop by our earnest haste to just observe the breath. We're not going to develop an aversion to suffering. We're going to learn how to face suffering head on. Like I said in, I think, the most recent questions and answers talk, we're not escaping, but we're facing our fears. And then without detriment to the rest of the world, without taking anything away from society, costing society, or being dependent on society, we can practice on the edges, the fringe of society, or far away from society, or within society itself, just as well, to develop equanimity, to develop loving kindness, compassion, joy, the four Brahma Viharas. And this is not leaving society to its own devices and not caring, but it's caring equanimously. So if there's something we can do to change a situation, it is to be done. We can do that. But if there's something we cannot change, we have to accept it as the way it is, and just that. And this is equanimity, allowing us to then practice, then earnestly observe the breath, enjoying samadhi, but not to the detriment of society, no. If practitioners are causing society to have to go out of their way to offer them support, if they're a burden on society, I would suggest they're not practitioners. It's not going about what the Buddha teaches us to do as monks. We have a huge number of rules in the Vinaya Pitaka. Far more than thousands, in fact, but they're condensed down to 227 Patimokkha precepts. They are the precepts of a monk that ensure we don't create any burden on society or any other beings that may surround us. And as long as we're adhering to those, we should be able to live largely self-sufficiently, albeit from a little bit of food. And it only has to be a little bit of food from each contributor, you see. So something off of their own plate, a spoonful from their own meal is the idea. Something they might even leave, the surplus, we can survive on, because that all put together is sufficient for a meal. I mean, it doesn't quite work that way, but this is the idea. And one question that's coming up, that I might as well answer now, is I mentioned I meet probably 30 to 40 people on Pindapat, which I do each day. So what do I do with all of that food? What do I do with the surplus? And that's my way of giving, offering, sharing. On my return, in fact, after walking 200 meters at the very most, there's enough food for my day, but I still go the full 3 kilometers, because 3.5, 4 kilometers, because people want to see me each day and have that interaction with a monk. And even if it's perfunctory, it's a mindful way of developing wholesome mind states for them and for me. But we have obviously a huge surplus of food. It all gets left outside on the table. There's a table outside for this purpose alone, nice clean table, and a nice clean tray, which I wash every morning and clean every day before going on Pindapata. I put all of the packages and the food that's surplus, which is 98% of it, on the tray, and just leave in my bowl enough for myself. So the rest is given to people nearby who need some extra food, need some food to eat themselves. So it's all shared out nicely that way. So it all serves a purpose. And this is the nature of the interaction between Sangha and lay practitioners in a nice, balanced Buddhist society, and can also work in a non-Buddhist society just as equally well, because it isn't really considered, that is not considered a religious activity. It's a practical way of living and supporting this Buddhist practice of living the Noble Eightfold Path. So on that note, I hope I haven't repeated too much the frequently asked questions, as was commented, but only by, I think, a couple of comments I noticed, but I did take it on board. Sometimes the repeats are going to come up because it's a part of reinforcing the overall idea of practice. And I by no means give you the same answer to any one question any time, because there are so many ways one can answer a lot of these questions. So even for my own benefit, I don't mind repeating the same questions when asked over and over again, because I'm reinforcing right view, establishing right view, not only for myself, but others hopefully also, by sharing those ideas and interacting with you on that subject. This is the nature of how this channel has come about and what it is doing today and now, with the subscribers, which I'm grateful to have, and your support, which I'm also very grateful to be the beneficiary of, to keep interacting with you in this form as long as we can, sharing my daily experiences without having to interrupt, because after I switch this off, without having to interrupt my solitude. I seem to have the benefit of both worlds, speaking to many, many people in one go, but then enjoying solitude for the rest of the day, the remaining 23 hours of the day. And that's a very important part, has become a very important part of my practice also, sharing, giving the Dharma as best I can from experience alone rather than intellectual knowledge, by way of dana, generosity, giving back to those that support me and allow me to be here. So gratitude for that, metta, loving kindness, and be happy, stay well until next time. Sukhi Hotu.